Ammo. Don't you love running out of it in Halo, stockpiling it until the final boss in Resident Evil, opening a secret door and finding it in a wall in Doom? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about ammo in a game that usually doesn't have any ammo, Metroid. It's a contentious subject since it has been applied to Metroid in big or small ways over the years, but I want to take some time today to talk about the different ways this series has used ammo as we are all waiting with bated breath to see how Metroid Prime 4 evolves the series. Metroid started its life on Famicom, the Famicom disk system specifically, and like a lot of action-adventure games, it was more about exploring a world and feeling a sense of place or verisimilitude than it was about getting limited-time power-ups or weapons. When you get the Ice Beam, you keep the Ice Beam the whole time. It doesn't run out after 30 seconds or 20 uses or whatever. You shoot these rippers, they become platforms, damn it, forever. However, there is a form of ammo common across all Metroid games in the form of sub-weapons, missiles, super missiles, power bombs, and these are the first that we'll be discussing before we get into the real shit that you probably want to hear about. I have a hard time classifying these sub-weapons as ammo in like the Doom or Halo sense. To me, ammo matters when it's a primary aspect of combat. These all do function in combat, of course. Against bosses, having enough missiles is like a certain skill gate to beating them, as most bosses are immune to normal gunfire. And super missiles, in the games where it's an alternate resource rather than a damage buff to regular missiles, are usually the trump card in a fight, since they are less plentiful and slower to shoot, meaning it's really easy to waste them all in one go. In power bombs, I can count on one hand that's been through a wood chipper the amount of times it's been even mildly useful in a boss fight. But it's obviously very good for exploration and clearing enemies and collecting X-parasites quickly. Not that any of that means it's meaningful ammo, as even then, you're using one or two per area, and in Fusion you get such a stupid amount of power bombs that you really have to try to run out. Zero Mission and Dread have a lot fewer of them, but wait until the end of the goddamn game to give them to you. Prime, I think, manages to make them feel like a real resource, useful in clearing enemies, and for exploration, and weirdly hard to recover sometimes, dear lord. But even then, I still hesitate to treat them as something more than a sub-weapon, like a grenade or something. As for the missiles' use outside of boss fights, I still think they are situational, though some people I see on YouTube think they're way more situational than they ought to be. Come on, guys. Just fucking unload the missiles. It's fine. Yes, even into the most pathetic little bug creatures, just destroy them. It's what missiles are for. You complain about having to melee counter everything and just mash normal shots or God help you charge shots at enemies. Just shoot missiles. No, I'm not letting this go. Probably the best argument that can be made for missiles being a true alternative ammo source is in Metroid Prime Hunters, and don't you worry, dear viewer, we will get there, but it kind of functions as Samus's ammo in multiplayer, but in the campaign, not really at all. I mean, I know you can rocket jump like in Quake, but Lord knows my inarticulate ass cannot pull that off consistently. That game already gives me early onset arthritis, so I try to stay the fuck away from it, to be honest. But alright, enough preamble. Let's get into it. The reason I wanted to make this video, I am now gonna try to convince you that the ammo system in the video game Metroid Prime 2 Echoes for the Nintendo GameCube is actually secretly good. And if you disagree, don't comment. I only want validation. I think when all things are considered, they did a pretty good job implementing an ammo system into the game. For those not in the know, Metroid Prime 2 uses a for-real, honest-to-goodness ammo system as opposed to the really bad system of switching beams in Metroid Prime 1. Instead of the standard power beam and 3 other infinite use weapons ranging from complete trash to obscenely busted, Prime 2 very quickly introduces a dual element system at the core of its game mechanics and gives you 2 beams that are undoubtedly much more effective than the power beam, but at the cost of ammo to use. Then you get an obscenely busted one right at the very end that ignores all the mechanics of the game, but that's fine because it's a reward for getting that far in the game. I think a lot of the hatred for this mechanic comes from a sort of fundamental misunderstanding of the game they are playing, or a refusal to engage with the mechanics and design. And hey, I get it. I played this game for the first time when it came out, and I was 9. I was a lot more flippant about using the light and dark beam for everything and was always very low on ammo for both of them. I also didn't know to look for the 4 expansions out and about, the first of which is pretty well hidden, and then they just give you the other 3 like behind a door or whatever. Once you start to pay attention to the video game you are playing, though, the secret is unlocked. Enemies almost always drop ammo of the opposite gun you use, sometimes a huge amount in one go, and the environment is littered with destructible stuff in both versions of the world. So it's never that hard to recover some or all of your spent ammo. Managing the ammo can, of course, be a delicate dance, but it's just a problem of not trusting that the game won't screw you over or make you waste a bunch of time. I think it's a much bigger problem than I'm able to go into here, but this is a pretty common issue modern gamers have going back to old games. I think even if you're annoyed by the mechanic, the flavor it brings is just too good. I'll admit, Metroid Prime 2 maybe has the absolute best and most tactile world building of any Metroid game. Not just lore scans or funny pirate data logs, but that feeling of seeing a Cthulhu shadow beast and knowing for sure that you can vaporize it in a few blasts of your light beam, or coming across a really resilient and pesky fauna and stopping it in its tracks with a dark beam. Hell, the dark beam is kinda so good that it's the best way to take care of some Dark World enemies too. There are even major boss fights that require switching between the 2 ammo sources. Chaika in its adult form switches between light and dark versions of itself, and of course the mutated Emperor Ing has a similar combat loop to the Metroid Prime, just, actually challenging. And you don't have to use the fucking wave beam to fight it. I think another aspect of the ammo system in Prime 2 I want to talk about is how it connects to the beam combo system from Prime. In that game, and again, I love that game, so bear with me here, but there was completely optional items that let you perform a special attack that either cost 10 missiles, like the Ice Spreader, or at a constant drain of missiles, like the worst items to ever appear in Metroid, the Wave Buster and Flamethrower. Truly, what were they cooking? In Prime 2, however, our beam combos are the Dark Burst, which is a fucking black hole that costs 30 ammo and 5 missiles, the Sunburst, which is a giant supernova that costs 30 ammo and 5 missiles, and the Sonic Boom, which requires 30 ammo from both sources and fires out a gigantic reality-shattering blast that nukes anything it touches, comes out extremely fast, and also costs 5 missiles. Now, I would be lying if I tried to say that these were that useful as an offensive option in most boss fights. Really nothing in the game requires that much raw power. Maybe if you can hit the Emperor Ing or Dark Samus with one, but they otherwise are just a big dick-waving trophy for the end of the game, honestly. It's better than the Flamethrower from Prime, quite seriously being a downgrade to just shooting enemies with non-charged plasma shots. And also the 3 Prime 2 combos are well hidden behind some fun environmental puzzles and out-of-the-way areas on the map, or, in Sonic Boom's case, in just a weird room in Agon. I really do think all these elements combine to make a fun and intuitive weapon system that really spices up combat. Prime 2 is largely an iterative sequel, but this aspect gives it a very unique identity, especially since the beam switching in Prime felt so arbitrary, and I feel like they realized this too because Prime 3 just has the normal Metroid-style beam stacking. But, dear viewer, that is not all she wrote in terms of ammo and Metroid games. It's not even the most like a standard FPS the ammo system has gotten in a Metroid game. Folks, let me introduce you to the game where that blue robot guy from the Prime 4 trailer is from, Prime Hunters on the DS. Thankfully, for me, there really isn't that much to say. I say thankfully because this game sucks ass. Okay, that's unfair. The single player sucks ass. The multiplayer is pretty fun, and in its multiplayer is where the weapons get their most logical use. For the most part in the campaign, enemies are weirdly few and far between, with the occasional appearance of a hunter who fights you like an Unreal Tournament bot, and your hand goes numb from rapidly firing at them with an awful claw grip that you have to use to control the game on the DS. See, they tried to implement a elemental weakness system, but it's less like Ikaruga and more like Mega Man. No, that's not right. It's like 3 sets of mutual weaknesses. I won't get into too much detail on the weapons themselves as power-ups. Believe it or not, I am saving that for a much dumber and even more excruciating video for you all to enjoy down the line. But generally, it takes all the basic ideas of Prime 2, elemental weaknesses, universal source of ammo with expansions, situational use in boss fights, but strips all the streamlined or polished qualities of them because at the end of the day, it's a bunch of weapons to be used by specific freaks in multiplayer mode, backported into a single player mode and put on a character that's not meant to be using them. And this is the only real progression items in this game, so I guess that's kinda cool. You get to open an orange door. I don't even think it's badly implemented or whatever. It's just, this feels so much more arbitrary than Prime 2 does. Like, the guns are moderately fun to use, but it lacks that ultimate cohesion of Prime 2, just sort of exists. They do also serve a function against the 2 main bosses you had to fight like 8 times, and of course the final boss, Goria. Shooting the walls in a specific order with the right weapons unlocks the real final battle, which is pretty cool to me as an 11-year-old, but now I'm sort of just okay never replaying Hunters ever again, because it's just kinda boring on top of its only passable use of ammo. That being said, I will scream if we get the shock coil as a weapon in Prime 4. I will also scream if we get one or all of the other hunters to show up in Prime 4. Alright, I think it's time to call it quits on this one. There is definitely more I could talk about, but I'm going to leave some of those ideas on the table for a future video. If Prime 4 does something meaningful with an ammo system or new sub-weapons, I would love to revisit the topic in a smaller video, but for now, that's all I got in me about this weird and niche topic, about a weird niche gaming series. I'm Wyatt, and join me next time as I talk about some other obscure topical corner of Metroid history. See you there.